Folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show. This journey has provided me with an education. The education has occurred because those who seek have always sought truth. In the case of my guest, it was the stone truth of music and the musicians who made it. The swing of Dixie and the marching bands, the Ed Bogas Soundtrack Machine and the clave beat of Cal Tjader. Boys turn to men because they believe they can play with the titans. No barriers, colorblind. With the less said, the better. Say it with your sticks. More often, as with my guest, someone opened a door, and he chose to walk through it. By walking through the door, it opened a gateway to new musical opportunities, gigs, and tours. Being too loose to truck and sing for your supper. My guest, as with most from the tribe, did not forget the opportunities afforded to him by his mentors. He is the first one to recommend cats for gigs or cultivate the local music scene by hosting jam sessions in the Susquehanna Valley. He learned this from Joe Henderson and Vince Guaraldi, Van Morrison and Phil Lesh. My guest can play standards or free-form music. He can hold it down even when there is no time, woodshedding for hours, and then putting his own individual stamp on the music. Still keeping the beat after some 50 years of creation, Steve Mitchell, an honor to welcome you to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Well, Jay, that's a hard act to follow, a hard description to live up to, but I'm really appreciative of you bringing knowledge to me. I've learned so much from your program and the online postings you put up for Denny's and Eddie Moore recently. I mean, you're just you're making the art better and better and better by doing what you do, and I sure appreciate it.
Well, I got to tell you, man, I've been I hit the books myself, and I realized that I'm really talking to a man with a heart of a lion in Steve Mitchell, because it's people like you. I have to be. I have surprised myself in some ways by being able to use social media as effectively as I never thought I could do it that way, but it has worked out. But it's because of the unsung cats, man. It's because of guys like yourself and Dick Burke and Alan Schwartzberg, and the list goes on and on and on. There's just guys that got the memo, and that memo is, hey, keep passing the torch, otherwise it's going to go out.
Exactly, the keeping the flame. Wonderful trumpet player, Dave Pendicite, who did a lot of studio work with us, with me, and with Ed Bogas in San Francisco for probably 20 or 30 years, and he just put out an album called Keeping the Flame, and we all kicked in. Wasn't like Kickstarter, but we just knew Dave, and a bunch of people sent in their $20, their $100, whatever, and he put out a wonderful CD called Keepers of the Flame of all original music, and the flame is going. I just a couple of nights ago, I had a 14-year-old drummer sent in, and a 18-year-old drummer, and I swear to God, 30 or 40 years ago, the drummers like that, there were only 5 in the world.
You're right. No,
these kids are practicing like crazy, and they're playing beautiful, and they get groove, and they get the fact that what you don't play leaves space for others. It's just amazing. Really gives me hope that this world that we're worried about killing our planet, that maybe there will be. The young people are getting, because of the social media, because of a lot of different things, I think there's hope for the planet.
I got to tell you, I happen to be in New York right now, visiting my family, and I'm sitting there with my dad watching the news, and, we generally are, glass half empty guys to a certain degree, especially when it comes to politics, but I feel the same way. I mean, at 35, a father of 2, and being able to be basically given this mission of cultivating true leaders. And I think, to me, I looked at him, I said, you can talk about us in decline, but I still feel that somehow, some way, we'll turn that corner. And it probably will be because of younger generations and a lot of, sort of curmudgeon-y older generations dying off. But, here's the bottom line, is that, I want you to talk specifically to the audience and to the musicians that are going to hear this about, I just saw something the other day where you wrote something like, come out and jam, it cures the doldrums of winter. And I talk a little bit about what you're doing in the Susquehanna Valley region to just cultivate the spirit. I find that to be fascinating. You realize that the music is larger than you. So what are you doing to keep that flame going, Steve?
Well, what happened to me was that I lived in San Francisco for about 30 years, and I was a very city guy. I didn't have a car. I played music, worked every night in a jazz club, and played recording sessions during the day, and got some tours and raised my two daughters and everything. But then, through a circumstance of my mom getting ill and was getting old, and I came back to take care of her and some different issues, and my brother was here, and he got cancer, so I stuck around to take care of him and be here. And lo and behold, I'm working 3 nights a week. I have 2 studies in my hometown. Not my hometown, but a town that's very small. Now it's in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. But I've got 2 study nights that I've been at a year or so, or 4 years, and in fact 14 years on the one. I have a jazz workshop on Sundays from noon to 4 at the Bullfrog Brewery in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. And this is an area where I found that small town and being able to build community around music, mainly about jazz music, improvisation. Mm-hmm. There are people in this area. There's a group called the Uptown Music Collective in Williamsport. A guy named Dave Brumbaugh came out of Berkeley, and instead of going to New York, he came back home and started teaching guitar players and bass players and drummers and piano players and getting other teachers. And now the town gave him a beautiful old Victorian house for $1 a year. He's got 50 to 100 kids coming there every week playing music. They get a lot of blues experience. They start on simpler things. They put on shows. But the small towns, to me, are the future of jazz. I had a friend who was going to go to Juilliard and try to make the cut in New York. And when he didn't get the job, or when he didn't get the scholarship he wanted to go to Juilliard, he went to Temple in Philly. And he told me the other day he plans to find a small town, really needs a music program, and go there and start teaching. And the jazz is, it's the beef. It's the real thing. It's not some kind of a hype, phony celebrity bullshit that you get in America oftentimes.
Yes.
This is something that's real. It's a lifelong practice like yoga would be or meditation, and it's real, so it works. People can do it in small towns. You can do it in New York. It's a lot harder to do it in big cities now than when I was, I'm almost 70, so when I was starting out, big bands were the place. They kept saying, oh, the big bands are done and you'll never be able to play. That's not true. I've been playing every day, many times, 3 things a day for many, many decades. I've been playing 60 years now. And it's rich. There's still a place for anybody that wants to get out there and play and teach, because people love to hear that next beat coming. They really need to know there's another beat. And if you just live in the now with your time, it just grows, and people keep dancing to it and liking it and being inspired, and everybody's a part of it. You're a big part of it, Jake, because the stuff you're doing is going to be copied, I think, all over the world. People are going to find out that in order to inspire the young players, they need to hear about these guys who went through it before and the women who went through it before.
Absolutely, and I am salivating to. Part of me is just, I want to go through every day of the 30 years that you lived in San Francisco. But To me, I think you make a valid point. I mean, I think small towns will cultivate improvisational music because the urban centers, which were thriving when you were in your heyday, are kind of burned out now. I mean, to a degree. I mean, it's just there's a supply and demand issue. But I want to go back. I want to go to something. You played with. I mean, the list is astounding. Everyone from guys like Van Morrison, who basically considered himself a sideman, to cats like Bogas and Guaraldi, and so many guys that had that unique sound. I mean, the music sounded fresh because you could tell who the cats were. Blue Mitchell, I mean, the guy had his own sound. So, I mean, while this guy, it's a heartwarming story about this guy coming back to your hometown, and he's got this Victorian house, and he's teaching kids. But, I mean, what about that individual sound, Steve? I mean, that's the thing that kind of gets me about your generation, is that everybody put their trademark on it. I mean, how can you can't manufacture that, and these kids certainly can't go on the road for 2-week residencies in Fort Wayne and in Gary, Indiana. So how do you get them not just to get in the groove and know that silence is music, but how do you get them to get that individual sound?
Well, I see now an awful lot of great young players touring the country on the internet, setting up gigs. The same thing is true, I think, it's the universal truth, that if you play enough, if you keep playing, you'll develop your own sound. You play enough gigs, you play long enough, you keep playing, running with fast company, You run with fast company, and that makes you strive harder. And then you're the fast guy, and you're teaching people to play that are not yet accomplished, but you're pulling them along. I remember Sonny Rollins came back from Europe and said something about how playing with all those European rhythm sections in the 50s made him a much stronger player. Because he had to teach swing and groove and all that, which he did, I'm sure, on every gig. Because if you listen to Sonny Rollins, he's got more than his own sound. He's got his own universe of sound. I heard that guy at Keystone Corner, probably 25 years ago, and he came out and played solo for a patch house. And it was 2 hours long. There was one long set.
God.
And he played, and there was not a sound in that club for 2 hours. Sonny just created a masterpiece of an evening. And as long as you keep playing, the thing is that it's easy to get discouraged. But I think if you're playing your instrument, even if you're playing, have to play 5 nights a week classic rock, or you got to play Chinese funerals, or you got to play in a symphony, or you got to play in a military band, whatever. As long as you're playing every day and you just keep working at it and pushing it, you'll find that you develop your own sound. And I just believe the cycle is not just in our generation. I think it continues to go on.
I know, absolutely. I can't reach into and get to Bird or Charlie or Dizzy, but it's vital to talk to. I mean, when you got out to San Francisco, you were living in the city itself, or where were you living, and what was how did you find your way? What was the first steady gig that you got out there?
Well, I came to town. I was from Pittsburgh. I went to Duquesne University, and I was playing with a doo-wop band called the Skyliners. And we did an album in New York with Bernard Purdy and a couple of guys who were real teachers to me. And then we were on the road, and we went to San Francisco. And it was 1967 in the spring, and we landed there, and I said, something's going on here. I'm not going back to Pittsburgh. I had graduated from Duquesne with a music BM and BS in music education, but I knew I wasn't going back east. There was something going on in San Francisco, and I got involved with a woman, and I had a kid, and I didn't want to tour because because I was I wanted to be the father that was there for his kids. I didn't want to be sending money home from Spain. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I got very fortunate. Vince Guaraldi passed away, and I got a call the same night from Ed Bogas saying, "Do you want to make a demo at Fantasy Records at 8 o'clock in the morning?" And we did. And after that became 25 years of Charlie Brown and 20 years of Garfield the Cat.
I am losing my mind. First of all, I love Ed Bogas so much, dude. I did an interview with him. He's always on my mind. The guy's a genius. I could not believe that you and him had a collaboration for so many years.
Well, he kept me employed and joyfully raising two daughters and having an income and being able to play jazz all the rest of the time and do all kinds of other things, do tours. If he knew I needed to go off to some place, and because we had a success in Italy or whatever, he'd just say, "Go ahead and let me know as soon as you get back." You know, Ed Bogas is an unknown champion of many musicians. If you listen to the conversations that go on among the older players in San Francisco, you know, everybody has an Ed Bogas story, and he's a marvelous. He is a genius. He's one of the 2 or 3 geniuses.
Yes.
I think Joe Henderson and Van Morrison are in that class.
Dude, Steve Mitchell is on fire. Dude, I mean, I can't. How many? The thing about it is this: Fritz the Cat. You played.
That was before me.
That was before you. Okay, I know there were guys like Lee Charlton, and there were other cats out there. I mean.
Oh yeah, Lee, man, he's one of my real mentors, man. Lee was on the scene way before me, and he and Jerry Granelli.
Oh God.
Oh boy. Well, the guy that from Australia that has a wonderful bass drum book out. I can't think of his name.
Oh, was it Bryce Rohde?
Oh, Bryce Rohde, yeah, but this guy was in the band with Bryce Rohde. Bryce Rohde's a piano player. This guy's a drummer.
He's a drummer.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, but I think that this is interesting for historical purposes. You're telling me Bogas had a lot of. I mean, I know I see him. He did some tremendous arranging. He was involved with Fantasy Studios, but you're saying that he actually had a lot more. He had a lot of pull.
Oh, he was amazing. They called him, Mick Quick Pencil, because he would just start writing parts like third trumpet, second trumpet, first trumpet, and he would have people copying, myself included, copying charts, and he'd be writing and transposing all the instruments for maybe 30, 40 players, chart by chart. He knew exactly what he wanted, and when prior to click tracks and computers where you need to do frames per second and all that, Ed was a graduate of, I think he has like a master's in math from MIT or something like that. Part of his background was mathematics, and he could just pull numbers out and tell you what to play, and it was amazing. And in those days, when Snoopy fell off the doghouse, it was on 344 beats after, 344 beats in, starting on the 16th note after beat 3 and ending on the last 8th note of beat 4 in the next bar, and you didn't have a picture. You were just reading charts because they didn't have any SMPTE code hooking up picture to music and that. But it just kept going and on, and Ed adapted to all the different changes. And, it's just, and it gets better and better. Musicians are getting more and more tools. I just think that drummers are going to be, I think there's going to be a new music that's not jazz, that's not rock. It's the next thing, and I think it's going to be based on drummers. Because drummers are doing all the commissioning, they're conducting, they're commissioning works, they're forming ensembles, and all over the world there are drummers playing together. In America, we have all the technology now from everywhere. Tablas, with that black dot in the middle of the drum head, we make those and use that same technique. We've got all this different new technology and amazing drum makers, cymbal makers, gong makers, and the new music that's coming up is going to be percussion. I think it's going to be a percussion
Can we go on the record now and can we at least get some names? What do you think the name of it is? Like rhythm simpatico. It's not going to be. The word fusion gets thrown around too much. We don't like that word. I don't like labels in general, but I like the idea. Are you talking about purely leadership, or you're talking about like the sound itself?
I'm talking about if you look at the symphonies were strings, Sousa was brass, big bands were saxophones, rock and roll has been guitar, amplified guitar, electric bass, electric pianos, vocals, but there's a new music that's coming, and I think it's going to be drummers. Maybe 6 drummers and 1 soprano saxophone player. I would take Paul McCandless for that person. But
Oregon, I love. Dude, you are Steve. Talking to Steve Mitchell here on the Jake Feinberg Show. But when you got out there in '67, were you moonlighting on? Were you doing different types of gigs? I mean, were you doing just straight jazz, or were you also?
No, I was playing with the Skyliners. We were doing Temptation covers and that kind of thing. We were doing, of course, the Skyliners hits, Since I Don't Have You, and Pennies from Heaven. Can you believe that?
Wow.
That was one of their hits. But they had their hits in the late 50s, early 60s. I joined them in 64, I believe, and it was a real good gig in Pittsburgh to be playing with the Skyliners. But when I got to California, we had a gig there for a while. And then I started to hang out with the music circus with Raphael Garrett and Gerald Ashito and Oliver Johnson, and there was this in San Francisco at that time there was the rock and roll stuff going on with the Grateful Dead and the Starship not the Starship, the Jefferson Airplane.
The airplane, sure, yeah.
And those people, and they were all active, and there was also a jazz community at the same time doing very, very outrageous avant-garde stuff. And I did a lot of work with the guy that invented liquid light projections, Bill Ham, and Jerry Gianelli and Fred Marshall were a part of that.
Unbelievable! Are you kidding? You were playing with Fred Marshall?
Yeah,
Fred. I remember talking to Grinelli, and he was talking about Fred. He actually built his own instrument at one point too. Some wild.
Make guitar.
These people.
Yeah, there were all these hot pockets of creation in San Francisco, as history tells us, and it was just an amazing time to be around. And I think it still is. There's still youth in this little town where I live who are seeking that same thing. They want spiritual enlightenment through music.
But yeah,
they're seekers.
They're seekers. That's right. But it was easy to seek. Kids. We talk about this Sunday brunch 12 to 4 jazz jam that you have going on. I mean, how does it work?
Okay, well, we started 14 years ago. Seth Olinsky, who's with Akron Family, and he's actually, people want to find his Kickstarter site. I just today got a note from him that he's got a Kickstarter program of starting a new label, album, for producing bands, and anyway, but he's up at Seth Olinsky's got a new Kickstarter site. So if you go to Kickstarter, you'd look that up. But Seth Olinsky and a bass player from Philadelphia who had moved up to Williamsport, Charlie Holmes, and myself, we started a Sunday morning jazz workshop, and we based it after Charlie Mingus's people writing music, coming in, playing as a workshop. It's not like a horse. It's not a what they call a dog and pony show. It's not entertainment. We're not there to entertain you. We're inviting you into our rehearsal, and we're going to play what we don't know. We're going to rehearse. We're going to try things out. And if we don't like what is happening, we'll stop and start over.
Wow.
And people have fallen in love with it. I mean, we've had packed houses literally for 14 years on Sundays at the Bullfrog Brewery in Williamsport.
You know, it's beautiful because I think the reason people are buying into it and it's because it's totally authentic. You guys aren't up there mailing it in or playing standards. You're literally trying to hammer and carve out some new horse. And
yeah, well, sometimes we do standards because we're trying ourselves to play tunes. You know, there are a lot of great tunes. Even if you know 3,000 tunes, there are still tunes you hadn't run into, you didn't know. And people come in and sit in and bring in all kinds of originals, and we've had, oh my God, it's just, and now a radio station, WXPI, has been recording us for 4 hours and then cutting that down to a 2-hour show that they put on every Saturday afternoon from 2 to 4. So it's just getting better and better. I can't tell you, I can't believe I have a steady gig that's been going for 14 years. And my Wednesday and Mondays are happening every week, and I'm in the country where there's no, I mean, this would have been the backwater totally a few years ago. And my friends in the city are all telling me about they're working for tip jars and they can't get paid. They can't make $100 at a gig, and that to me is like a minimum. You can't be a musician on. You have to live. The country has to realize, people have to realize that artists have to eat. I mean, you want to play, but you got to live a life too.
Well, and it's a values thing that goes on as well, in the idea that too much of our society has viewed music as art as opposed to an employment or work, which it is. It's a lot of work, and there was, you know. The question I have, when you got out to San Francisco, you obviously were already, you know, pretty established drummer at that point, but what sort of what were some of the early what were some of the early run-ins with some of the titans? Did you get over the Ali Akbar Khan School of Music at all? Did you play any polyrhythms at that with?
Oh yeah, we were working with that. I at the moment at that time I didn't have. I studied with Bill Ford. He was a student there, but I couldn't afford or go there. I was working very steadily, and I had a young child, so I was just playing all the time and you know, trying to make enough money to survive. And I would have loved to have done that, but I did study with a student, and you know, I benefited a great deal by, you know, world music and other. I've been a fan of tabla and, geez, I mean, there's such beautiful music all over the world in drummers.
Yes.
Groups of drummers all over the world. And so far in the United States, I mean, we have the Rhythm Devils and Boom and some, but I think the future, as I keep harping and going back to, is that these young drummers are going to start putting together music that, you know, every band will have at least 2 or 3 drummers, and I expect there'll be many, an orchestra of 50 drummers maybe. You know, I think that the new music it's got to get back to earth. It's got to be rhythm based, and people need to get in they have to get to the spiritual center of humanity and begin to live in comfort, not comfort, but live in tune with the planet.
I think you are. I don't know. I mean, this is so. I mean, you could. Let's just go farther with this, though. I mean, you see, like maybe, you know, tablas and maybe some conga drum. Like you see 3 trap sets, or you see different world percussion within.
All of that and new instruments that are not just like that. Oh boy, there's that new hang drum.
Right.
I mean, there are all these new creations that are just coming into play, and I think that it's going to take 20 or 30 years, but I bet you there's going to be a lot of people. You know, are you familiar with the permaculture movement?
No.
Permaculture is where you kind of look at your own relationship to the planet and what you're doing, what your carbon footprint is, and what you're doing. And there are a bunch of youngsters right now who kind of thoughts from the 60s, and they are really opening it up to doing things that we still think are completely nuts. But they go out and sit in the woods and develop their sense of place, and the woods educates them on how they should live in harmony with the planet. And this is so related to the seekers of jazz. Anybody who plays a tenor saxophone or trombone or trumpet or drum bass, and they're really working toward whatever that place that they hear when they hear John Coltrane, or they hear Charlie Parker, or they hear Coleman Hawkins. They hear something that is beyond the human, the brain. It's from the heart. I think it's from the crotch too. It's not just the brain, not just the heart, not just the crotch, but it's all three lining up in being a way that we can survive as a species. Because if we don't change our ways, it's just a lot of really unhappy people slowly buying things that they think they need.
Yeah.
They're told they need them, and they get them, and it doesn't make them happy.
Yeah,
I just think that the culture's got to come around, and I don't think any better place than jazz could lead the spiritual movement where it's going.
God, I'm blown away right now. I mean, this whole physiological sort of trifecta, it's invigorating. It's also nice to. You're not going to affect everybody. Some people are always going to be caught up in the material world to a degree, but it does take pockets of real mavericks and seekers, and then they need those mentors as well. But was this? There wasn't the type of technology was not existent in the late '60s and early '70s in San Francisco, but. Talk about guys like Joe Henderson. Talk about guys like Blue Mitchell. How would they handle themselves on the bandstand, or even insofar as they weren't up there trying to control everything? I think that's the other part of it, is letting go of control, letting Mother Nature take over to a degree.
Absolutely, that's really a hard thing to learn. Joe Henderson was such an education for me, and he was one of the. He and Van Morrison were the two people that I played with. I felt like they actually took over my playing at a certain point. We were playing together, and when I was playing with them, I would do things that I had never played before, and they didn't come from me. I just know it. I could. Joe wanted something from my cymbal, and pretty soon it's coming out, and I'm watching it from above, and it's not me doing it. It was a stronger force. And both Joe and Van Morrison, to me, Blue Mitchell, Harold Land, oh man, they were just the most wonderful giving people. Harold Land stood behind me when I didn't know a tune, and would just, when I tap you, go to Latin. When I tap you again, go back to swing. Because I didn't know a couple of tunes they played, and it was just, and then they keep me out until dawn just buying me breakfast. You know what I mean? It was just like I would give anything to spend time with them. And, Harold Land in particular and Joe Henderson they were teaching all the time. And just very fortunate to get a chance to play some with them. I wished I had been able to record, with Joe. But, hey, I got to play with him enough that I gained a great deal of help my drumming. What can I say? It helped my head.
Where were you? Were you playing at the Both And or the El Matador? What kind of clubs were you playing at with them?
Oh boy, all over the place. The Jazz Workshop. Can't remember that. Yoshi's, the first Yoshi's.
Yes.
The original Yoshi's.
In San Francisco, yeah.
Yeah, many clubs.
Was it Jack's on Sutter?
Oh, yeah. I did get some Jack's on Sutter, yeah. That was wonderful. We had a band called Sweet Apple, which was on Columbia, and Herbie Nichols and Oshel Wright.
Oh, my. Oh
A
my!
lot of these cats who it was just wonderful.
Wait, did you? So I want to get the Steve Mitchell discography. There was on Columbia Sweet Apple. There was an album out called Sweet Apple.
Yep, there's an album called Sweet Apple, and it came out in 1968.
Oh my!
Harvey Brooks produced it, and and it really it was during that period where a lot of things were also falling apart. People were getting there was a lot of ruminating at that time, and people were getting together, and they were also, as you know, from the bands, a lot of the bands went through major changes or disappeared. And this one basically disappeared because there was just too many different, there were too many people of different directions that it just fell apart.
How would you describe the music itself of Sweet Apple?
Oh, Sweet Apple was basically, I was the only honky in the group. and basically I was so honored to be playing with these dudes. They were just great, and they wrote funk tunes, and I think the music is wonderful. I'm still really proud of that album, and I don't have a copy of it. My daughter does, and a few friends of mine have copies of it, and at some point I'm hoping. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff I recorded with a lot of different people that are sitting in the vaults, and I just, not for fame or fortune or economics, I just hope some of this stuff that we did, there was stuff recorded at Mickey Hart's Ranch in the early 70s with, oh my God, wonderful musicians, engineered by Dan Healy, the guy from the Grateful Dead.
Oh, of course. No, you got it. Let's go into, this is serious. Who was it? Was it the it was the Digger Rhythm Band, or who was up there?
No, this wasn't Mickey's stuff. Mickey was letting us use his recording studio, but actually Mickey played on a lot of the stuff. Carmelo Garcia was a timbalero, and the conguero was he went on to he's a Santeria priest until he for a long time.
Are you serious?
My brain's going away.
No, I know Carmelo Garcia. He was a wonderful timbalero. He played with Joe Henderson too, on a couple of albums.
Really, I didn't know that.
He played on Canyon Lady. He played timbales on that. But so you guys, it was you, Conguero, and Carmelo on timbales, and like Zakir Hussain. Was there Indian percussion up there?
No, it wasn't Zakir. He was still probably in knee pants, kind of thing. I know that. Oh gosh, I know they were booked a lot of the things by Snooky Flowers, the baritone saxophone player with it's a Cosmic Blues Band with Janis Joplin.
Sure. No, so you guys, and so someone's holding. This is in your vaults, or somebody else is holding on to this stuff. I mean, this was recorded stuff.
Oh, this stuff is all recorded. I don't know. I would imagine Dan Healy or Mickey Hart or maybe Sticky Flowers or some of those people they might have the master tracks of that. It just was a very fertile time, and I just love for people to be able to hear the crossover stuff. That there used to be a club called Caesar's Palace in North Beach, and I used to play there on the breaks. I've had some really wonderful, it's just luck,
Yeah.
A friend of mine got the gig playing the breaks on a club where there's Latin bands from Colombia, Venezuela, Panama, Guatemala, Mexico. Different bands would come up and play at this dance hall in North Beach, San Francisco. It was on Green and Grant, and it was called Caesar's Palace.
Oh my God!
But that's where I met Carmelo Garcia and Jose. I can't remember his name. Conguero. He's very, very well known as a papa.
And that was the part of it, is that Well, I want to continue with the Mitchell discography. The Columbia, the Sweet Apple thing is going to be huge. I'm sure that's a very hard record to find, but I'm going to be digging for that immediately. What about what about your experiences playing with Cal Tjader? Were you playing with a conguero with him?
Well, I was playing with Cal strictly in studio work. We were doing, we did a Sears commercial. He was on call for Ed Bogas. It was all Ed Bogas there because he was contacting Cal. Cal was coming in, and we'd hang out and do sessions. And for a couple of years, I'd see Cal for a stretch of a few days every month, and then he'd go on tour, and then he'd be back in town, and we'd get together and hang. And it was such a wonderful hang because he was just had such a sense of humor and was teaching also. He'd be on my case, and we did a couple of clubs, but mainly he was using Vince Ladiano and oh boy,
and like Poncho Sanchez maybe.
Yeah, Poncho.
Yep.
And the guy who wrote Morning, Blair Fisher. Blair Fisher
on piano, sure, yeah.
That was his band, but I was working with him. We were just both paid studio players, and you're waiting around to play one or two notes sometimes, or to overdub your part or do something, and Cal was he was a real buddy. I really, really, really loved him, and I felt devastated when we heard he'd passed away in the Philippines. It was just, horrible.
Did you I also noticed along the way that I don't know if you were on tour with Joy of Cooking.
Yeah, I did an album or two with the Joy of Cooking, and we toured with them, and that was a real experience. I'm in touch online with Mac Cridlin. You know who Mac Cridlin is?
Absolutely.
Yeah, he was Tony Williams' roommate up in San Rafael, and Mac and I did we did the Joy of Cooking stuff, and several other artists, and Fantasy Records, it was the Bay Area record company, and sometimes they didn't have it all perfect, but they were, they really did a lot. Being in the Bay Area, they really did help us out a lot. I mean, local musicians, we found a way to learn the material to back people up, and then we'd get the tours to do them,
I was going to say,
it was great.
I was going to say, because when I talked to George Duke, he was talking about, he'd walk into the lunchroom to get a cup of coffee, and Cannonball Adderley was in there, and then he'd go somewhere else, and there'd be another group. Cal Tjader would be playing. I mean, that to me was one of the most vibrant, active places of music.
Oh man, the first night I walked into Wally Hyder's, I went in to set my drums up for a session the next day. And I didn't have a roadie at the time, I carried my bass drum in, and somebody was playing the piano in Studio C. And it was just wonderful, so I kind of just came in and out very softly, and I looked up, and it was Duke Ellington. He was just in there. They said they asked him to try out the piano and see what he thought. So, yeah, you get those experiences that just inspire you, and I'm hoping that as the youngsters who are, coming up at a period where everybody's saying, like, it's not going to, this is going to die or that's not going to happen. If you believe it, follow your passion, because if you want it bad enough and you work hard enough, you get the sweat equity in there, you're going to be able to have a wonderful life being a musician. I think I'm so glad, that I chose this path. It's all I've ever done. I've really never had another job.
Well, I'd be remiss. This is another thing that totally blew me away. But can you please explain how this band Too Loose to Truck came about? This is going to go down. This is going to go on a lot of blogs. So,
okay, well,
yeah, please tell.
I was playing with a piano player 4 nights a week in Nevada at Shipwreck Beats. It was John Allaire and Mitchell, and we were playing duo gigs. John sang and played piano and a B3 organ at the same time. And we're playing one night, and this fella comes in with a saxophone, and he's dressed all in black, and he's got a black hat on. And nobody knows who he is, and he's standing, and the dancers are bumping into him and knocking him. He'd be playing, and they'd knock his saxophone and get him banging into his mouth. And he was just really just a unknown, but he played pretty good, you know. And it turned out it was Van Morrison. So Van started to like playing with us, and we did some playing with him that way, like that. Just as, you know, he came to our gigs and played with us because he enjoyed playing, and he wanted to develop his saxophone chops. But he started to sing more and more, and then Phil Lesh had, I'd run into Phil at one of Mickey's Hearts thing, and we talked, and he said he wanted to be able to play when the Dead weren't on the road. So John O'Leary, and there was all the Marin County guys, John O'Leary, Terry Haggerty from the Sons of Chaplin, and Van, and Phil Lesh, and there was a revolving group of people, all kinds of different people who were in and out of that thing. And it wasn't always Van. A good bit of the Loose to Truck was just Phil and John O'Leary, myself, and Terry Haggerty. And, you know, it was just, we played locally when the gig came up later on, when Bill Graham was booking Van, when Van signed with Bill Graham, and we started doing these things called jam sessions, and they were usually Phil on bass and the same band. But, you know, it was just a very thrown together good time had by all. And once again, Phil Lesh is an amazing musician. He's such I used to tell him, Phil, you need a bass player because you got so much going on. You don't play the usual bass parts, and you could use to play with another. We should have a bass player and you. But I was kind of razzing him on that because he certainly wasn't your standard bass player.
How did you? No, that's what I'm curious about. It is that how did you work with Phil? Because, like you said, he's not your. It's not like playing with Herbie Lewis, or even though those guys are incredible. But it wasn't like, the guy's he's all over the place.
Yeah, well, you just know you got to be able to carry, a drummer's got to be playing the line, you got to be carrying your line whether you're the only person or you're playing with Joe Henderson, And Joe said to me, he said, don't listen to me so much. He said, if you listen to me, I'll throw you off.
Right.
And it was just as a drummer, you got to just keep that groove and the time and the tempo and that feeling. And if you do that, everything works out. You can't think too much. You really got to just turn off your mind. That's why I think being a Quaker helped me, because I grew up and had to sit an hour every Sunday, in a Quaker meeting. There's no talking. And, so, if somebody gets the urge to say something, they can, but generally, you just sit in silence for an hour, and that really taught me a little bit about focusing the mind, and just for a drummer, it's just playing that groove for however long that song goes, and listening to everybody, and taking charge of the groove, and, not, even if Joe Henderson says, if he gets rushing or something, you just lay there and keep the time, and so I think that helps. I don't. I'm certainly not what's the word? I'm not a virtuoso at doing it. There are a lot of drummers who are just in this day and age now. Drums have come so far. When I started playing, there were only about 5 drummers in the world. Art Blakey, Philly Joe. There were maybe 10 drummers that were of a certain level. And now there's thousands. You listen to these, the young kids, man, and everybody's, an awful lot of people are playing drums and pushing the envelope constantly. So,
what do you think your primary responsibilities are? To the younger generations, because There's a lot of cats that I talk to, and they say, these younger guys, or just anybody, they have monster chops. But it's about containing the ego, Steve. You don't always have to get your point across by playing the loudest or showing off the most. And I think that my generation, younger generations, are more insecure. And I'm just trying to figure out what you think the intangibles that you can bring to these guys, because they obviously are technically proficient, but maybe lacking a little bit of that soul.
Yeah, well, what the deal is, you learn that it's not what you play, it's what you don't play that gives other players the room to do things, and then they want to play with you because you make them sound good. You got to get out of the way and play time. I mean, I've always been a time drummer. I've never been a drummer with a fast single stroke and all kinds of. I mean, I've done a lot of polyrhythms and stuff, but I don't work out a solo that I did a gig, exchanged the gig before I left San Francisco in 1995 with Dave Black. And he was the double bass drum guy who followed Louis Bellson in Duke Ellington's band. And he did this incredible solo every night. And, I would play he and I were splitting the 7-hour gig. And I'd be sitting there with this whole big drum set, and I'd just play what I play for a solo, which is more melodic, but I had no technical, I couldn't dazzle people with my technique. I just played what I felt was moving. It would move people. It was conversational. It was melodic. And I love Shelly Manne. He was a very melodic drummer. Learned a lot from him. He was really, wonderful timekeeper, but also a wonderful. He knew what not to play, and that's the biggest thing. Is just leave holes for people to put their stuff in, and make sure you keep the time rock steady. And I think no matter what happens in music, you'll succeed if you keep your ego down. Did you play with? You mentioned before about Fred Marshall. It's still blowing my mind about the Megatar. But the thing is, what about Flip Nunez and George Morabus? Did you know those cats? George Morabus was my best friend, and we spent about 5 years doing everything together. It was absolutely wonderful.
Unbelievable.
And then he passed away, very, very unexpectedly from asthma when he was about 50, I think.
What kind of gigs were you guys just doing? Were you down in Japantown at Jigogu? Where were you?
Yep, that's where I met him. I was playing when they were both playing keyboards in the Jigogu.
Oh, my God.
What's that wonderful bass player? Michael played with Dixie and guitar. He played guitar.
Oh, Michael Howell.
Michael Howell. Oh, man, yeah. Thank you for reminding me.
No, Michael is one of the reasons I started my program. I had a chance. I tracked him down, and we talked about this idea. And I also interviewed Latiano. It was the organ, piano, guitar, drums. That to me is just the hippest thing in the world. And you were down in Jigogu every night. And at the time, I had no idea Steve Mitchell you spent 30 years there. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that was a wonderful gig. I just had so much fun. Mike Rucker used to come there and sit in after he was in town with Billy Cobham and all. He'd come down and play.
What do you think about, you just bring up something, San
Francisco is a magic place, and I love it dearly, and both of my kids are out in California. They each got a kid, so I got 2 grandkids out there, but I miss it, but right now I'm working on playing here every night. I try to play music every day with somebody,
Well, I was thinking when I set up this interview with you, I said, there's no way he's going to be able to do it because he's going to have a gig, but I'm glad I caught you.
You gave me a lot of options, and you asked me when I was free, and this is perfect. I'll tell you, I am so happy, Jake, to get the chance to talk with you and brag about things and make some memories. But Michael Howell, this guy who deserves so much credit.
Well,
where is he now?
Well, if you're interested, I'll send you his phone number. I got all his contact info. He'd love to hear from you. He's in New York and he's playing a lot now.
Oh, I bet he is. Yeah.
He's playing
with Eddie Henderson.
and Jimmy Owens. But that, talk about that again for the younger generations. How important it was that the communal aspect of playing Jigogu and then seeing Brecker showing up after a gig from the East Coast. It's that tribal nature. Like Phil Wood said, it's not a big tribe, And so but for those younger kids, do you have people that will come in and see you, some buddies of yours, they'll come in and swing in and sort of get that camaraderie going?
It happens all the time on our Sunday gig. I've patterned a Monday get together called it's called Mitchell's Monday Music Mashup, and every Monday there's a whole new group of people who come in from another town or come in on the way through town or hear about it and come in and play. And oh my God, we have like horn sections and background singers and the most amazing combination of people coming in. And the whole thing is to play what you don't know. Don't come in and play your shtick. We don't want to hear your shtick. We want you to come up and do something that you haven't done, pull you out of your comfort zone, But there is a real community in the jazz experience. I don't know how to explain I don't know what it is that calls certain people to this life, but let me get a sip of my coffee. Hold on.
Go right ahead.
Get to that. It's a very strong communal experience. That music is something that you give people that they love and they get released. Live music does something to you when you listen to it. I know from getting older that sometimes I don't have a gig and I'll go out to hear people play. And I found that I get a great deal of joy sitting in the front row listening to people that I only thought would come by being there playing.
Right.
That's fun to play, but the whole feeling of communal togetherness, I think there's something there with the internet and modern social technology, but there's something about the music community, the art community, the poetry community that is it's 1 and 1 equals infinity. That we're all connected from a single cell, sort of, and we're all brothers and sisters, and we're all part of this humanity. But it just seems that music is a way that just pulls everybody together, and it's a way to eventually let the ego go. We play music because we want applause, and we want to, I think the musicians sometimes don't feel so good about themselves until they get to perform, and then a lot of people clap and say, you're really okay, you're really good. And we like that, but there's a bigger spiritual presence that when you start playing for a while, you begin to realize that this is something that can change the world. Because a lot of people aren't very happy. They've got so much stuff and they want more, and they're not fulfilled. And something about playing music and jazz, it gives people that fulfillment. And when you come up through the clouds and you've played a really good solo, you look over and there's somebody else sticking up through the clouds, and you say, hey, wow, you did that too, and then you begin to have this convention of the gods, or whatever, people that have broken through into a creative space together and start to share that. And it's just, it's a human potential movement, I think. You just make your life a little better and find other people that love what you love and let go and celebrate the ecstatic experience, because it's all right to feel good. I live in an area where there's an awful lot of people who are convinced that we are bad people and we have to go, commit to something that we don't even understand, and say we love it so we can be saved. But I'll tell you, you can be saved by playing jazz and being creative and involving other friends and making new friends. And it's just, I think jazz is a really immense experience that people don't, they take it way too lightly. They think it's just, something we do for a little bit of fun and want paid for. And, but in truth, music can really save you.
You're an inspiration to me, Steve. It's called love, basically.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
And I think that you're right. There is it's just, it overlaps with my conversation with my dad tonight. Is that we're talking to each other, and we'll put this out there into the universe, and a lot of other people will hear this that think the way we do. But there is this undercurrent, cross current of people that are basically believing that Armageddon is approaching, and that we need to be out of this world. And I think all you can do with them is just swing your ass off and knock them back into the present tense, right?
Every hot lick you play is another nail in the coffin of those damn right-wing fundamentalists who want to tell us that we have to accept someone as my savior, or I have to think like them. The only thing is, that's what I really don't like about it, is they don't respect what I think. They tell me I'm a bad person because I don't think like them. And that's very scary when you start to think that way. And, that's not what Jesus taught, or Muhammad, or Buddha,
Absolutely not. But to your credit, you left the bastion, which actually, let's just be fair. Urban centers are not what they used to be. San Francisco would not be that lucrative a place for you anymore. You talk to cats out there now, they used to have a gig every night, and now they're lucky if they get 3 or 4. And you went to a rural community in Pennsylvania, as they say, between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh is Arkansas. and instead of sitting around and being some shock jock out of your house, you've decided to take it into the pubs and into the clubs and with the youth. And to me, that is what it's all about, is just stirring the drink, because at the end of the day, most people are they're not doers, they're judgers. They judge, and they judge from a point of view because they've never done anything. So and as far as I'm concerned, art is to be shared. As Pat Martino would say, art is to be shared and not to be judged. And as far as I'm concerned, you're stirring that drink of consciousness and enlightenment, Steve Mitchell.
I can't believe how many people come every Sunday, every Wednesday, every Monday. We have 3 different groups. There are 3 different bands, too. And they're slightly different styles, but we have, over the years, developed listeners. We've educated hundreds of listeners. And people that are passing through, they live in Chicago, and they come to visit their mother in New York every 2 years. They make sure they're in, when they come through the state, they're going to be at the Bullfrog on a Sunday between noon and 4, and they love jazz. And I just can't. There are weeks that it's just stunning to meet the 30 different people who come in, and some are there every week, some are there every once a year, some are there once a month. It's just, and they've learned to love jazz and improvising, and they become jazz fans, and it's just. It's amazing, but there's a whole audience out there wanting the beef. I think television, we've been just sold a complete pablum because of the economics and the politics in our country. We've the lowest common denominator. I remember television at the beginning had so much potential, and it's just junk mostly. Now there's starting to be some really good new writing and stuff. I really believe in the future, because I think the people are going to take back the television thing and at least give us some really good shows, But for a long time, it's just so bad. But same with music, I tell people, come and hear us. It's not going to be Muzak. It's not going to be something from the 60s you heard 30,000 times. It's going to be us right there. And because of you, we're going to play differently, and you're going to be a part of it. Listening to live music, it influences the players, and the listeners become actively creating what we're doing.
Well, Steve Mitchell, I gotta hop on a plane first thing in the morning with my family back to Tucson. But much love, man, and I gotta tell you, what an inspiration you are to legions of musicians and young people out there. And I think actually, quite frankly, you're not delusional. You're right on the pulse of it. And I hope one day to get to the Bullfrog and get to meet you and catch a session.
Well, I'll tell you, I've been just so happy that you have included me with the players and it's just Jake. It's an honor to have known you, and I feel always when I do something like this that I said so little and I talk so much. But,
no. We'll pick up part two. We'll let this breathe, and then we'll pick it up again because there's more to say.
And I can't wait to meet you.
Yeah, Steve. Yeah, listen. Happy New Year,
family,
and
I
love.
I love what you're doing.
Well, keep up the support. I can use it, and much love to your family. Keep it happening, my friend.
Okay, thank you. Love you.
Take care, bud.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.